us came into the room today with certain preconceived ideas about what it means to be a person of faith and also what it means to be a person who interacts with the world and wants to make a difference, however you want to term that. If you want to call it promoting human flourishing, that's how we talk around here, right? Or you just want to say, I want to make people around me or things around me better. Well, we've talked about three different ways, three different agencies that do that in our American society, and of course around the world as well. The first being government, the second being the nonprofit sector, and the third being the for-profit sector. And next, I want to introduce to you two people who believe in that idea, believe in the idea of being a person of faith, making a difference. Not just the kind of difference that sounds good or that looks good on a piece of paper, but actually is an effective, efficient change to the people who need to be changed. So I'm going to invite them up here in just a minute. But before I do that, just think about the idea of two people who started out in the nonprofit sector. So they kind of started out in the church, but they ended up in corporate America, and they did it on purpose. My name is Kathy Emmons. I'm the host of The Ride Home with John and Kathy, which is an afternoon radio program heard here in Pittsburgh, 4 to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. My co-host, John Hall, and I talk about issues like this. We talk about issues related to faith, but how faith intersects with economics, how it intersects with business and the arts, and higher education and lower education. You name it, we talk about it. So I'm happy to be here today because, as I mentioned earlier to a group of friends, Jubilee has had a huge impact on my life and my understanding. And I'm anxious for you to meet these next two people because I think they might change some of your understandings as well. So Katie Tarara, come on up here. Give her a hand, come on. Katie Tarara. Katie, this is your seat over here.
I broke my microphone.
Katie's the relationship manager at the CMMI Institute here in Pittsburgh, and it helps companies adopt best practices for mission-critical engineering environments. And if you don't know what that means, you will in just a couple moments. And next to her is Jim Stout. Jim works for Provident Insurance, which provides financial protection to volunteer firefighters and others who work in the emergency medical field. Both of them, as I mentioned, started out in the nonprofit sector. It made them who they are. But they've moved into business, and so let's jump in. So for both of you guys, first off, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. We're glad you're here. Tell us about your transition. How did you both make the move from nonprofit to profit? Katie, we'll start with you.
Sure. So I graduated from college about 15 years ago and came on staff with the CCO, great organization to work for. I'd been involved in college and started as a campus minister there and moved into some leadership roles. I worked for the CCO for 9 years. It was awesome. Then I transitioned to another local nonprofit called the Pittsburgh Leadership Foundation that you've all recently learned about, hopefully. And that was also a great place to work. In both of those places, I had a ton of opportunity to learn and grow, and all of it was baked in this idea of vocation that does not have a split between the sacred and secular for goodness in the world. And it turned out I really liked reading business books and thinking strategically and making plans and thinking about organizational development. And so,
did you feel like a traitor while you were reading?
No,
this?
it was. No. I was definitely no. The fact that I didn't read every theological book Byron sold me aside,
it's a shock.
I bought a lot of them. I just didn't read them.
We'll recover.
But so whenever a few years ago, when I was ready to take the next step in my career, I started really actively looking for a for-profit opportunity to move into the business world and was fortunate to do that.
Okay. Jim, what is your history?
I was not looking for a for-profit context. I generally thought you business people were a bunch of greedy pirates. I had a really reductionistic understanding of business. I didn't get the sense that that business could be about serving people and about the cause of justice. So I was lucky or blessed to be challenged by a mentor of mine who kind of came alongside, and he was he spent his career in the pharmaceutical industry. So he was a pirate amongst pirates in big pharma.
The worst of the worst.
But he really challenged my cynical attitude about business. And he pushed me. One of the things he said in one of our many conversations was, Jim, commerce has done more to improve the lives of the world's poor and disenfranchised than any NGO or a nonprofit organization has ever hoped to do. And that comment really rubbed me the wrong way as a young 20-something. But it began to really change the way I thought about work. It began to change my theology of work. And I just had the sense that I wanted to see justice happen in the world, and I thought the for-profit world worked against that. I had a really limited understanding of economics. I saw that the pie was only so big. And so if any one person or organization got a bigger slice of that pie, that necessarily meant there was less pie for everybody else. I had no concept that through commerce, you could grow that pie and create more opportunity for everybody. So a good friend of ours, Kirk Petula, who many of you know, is fond of saying that commerce is the way that most of us love and serve our neighbors on a regular basis, on a daily basis. And once that concept started to sink in for me, I decided I really wanted to be a part of the for-profit world.
So there was a transition, not just an intellectual one, but there had to be some planning involved too. So Katie, what did it require of you? Did you have to go back to school? Did you have to forget everything the CCO or the Pittsburgh Leadership Foundation had taught you?
No, fortunately, no, definitely not. Dan, everything's fine, Dan.
It's a valid question.
Valid question. I'm very fortunate that I got a job that needed me to use the exact skills I'd learned right away. I was brought in at a time where it was really critical that I know exactly what I was doing, which lasted for like a week, and then I had to learn a lot of things and continue to learn every day, which I love about my job. But I think the thing that was most important wasn't a new set of skills. It was really learning to translate the experiences and the skills I had built, the strengths I have, into a new context. But at the core, my experience in nonprofit, and I think I was extra fortunate to work in organizations that care a lot about understanding how people function and helping us know what we're really good at. But also I was in my 20s, and so I think a lot of us, that's when we learn what we're good at, right, and what we really love. So those things happened at the same time. I got maybe an extra good charge of that in my early career, but I knew what I was good at and what I liked to do, and so then when I went looking for a new job, I knew what to look for. And for me, what I'm made to do is bring people together to go after something, to engage around an idea and pursue that together so everyone wins together. So when I was at the CCO, for example, I did a lot of things there. One of the things I'm proudest of is I spent 1 year working closely with the Jubilee team with this great event. Jubilee had grown into this nationwide, really well-respected event that everybody wanted to speak at. Everybody was talking about it, this conference for college students about a theological worldview. This is amazing, except somehow the value of that had been lost on our campus staff. It was just kind of disconnected for a season. And so there's this amazing thing that's theirs, and the campus staff who I worked closely with for the first part of my time at the CCO didn't seem to feel ownership. So I just spent 1 year working with the team, and my job, as I see it now, particularly in retrospect, was to build that bridge, to help staff understand that there's this incredible resource that they get to offer their students, and help the events team really leverage their staff to recruit students into this transformational event. So I can't make Jubilee. That's not what I'm good at. And I'll be honest, I wasn't that great a campus minister. But what I can do is bring those things together to help share this transformational experience with more people. And so in my new job, I'm a partner relationship manager. And what that means is our company works with organizations, as Kathy mentioned, that do mission-critical software engineering for the most part all over the world, and they use our products to ensure quality and reliability. It's super interesting, actually, and I'd be happy to talk to you about that another time. But the way that gets to all the countries, there's 5,000 companies around the world, 94 countries on all 7 continents. I don't go to all those places. Our company licenses our products for delivery and use in those companies. My job is to make sure that the companies that license those products and services have what they need to be successful, to succeed. Because when they succeed, our company succeeds, right? That's a pretty basic economic design, and that's great, except that that wasn't the case. When I took this job, our business model was a little bit broken. So what happened was when our partners were doing really, really well, it cost our company more, and there was no revenue to make that up. And so you can actually imagine that if our partners were wildly successful, they would put us out of business. That's a problem. When I took this job on, my first big project was to fix that. I had to fix that. And that's not something I did on my own, I can assure you, but I spent about 6 months building on work that had been done, working with our partners, talking to everyone around the world, and working with my colleagues to redesign our business model so that when our partners do well, we do well, and when we do well, our partners do well. So now our interests are aligned, and we can move forward together and grow the larger pie, as Jim said, in a way that allows us to share it more. I am so thrilled about it. It's incredibly rewarding. It had nothing to do with being a campus minister, and it had everything to do with being a campus minister. Like who I am, I just brought it to bear, and it's a different context. When I am in a strategy meeting, when I am building a financial model, I feel God's pleasure. And so whatever the context, the opportunity to do that that's why I get up in the morning. And it's I'm so glad I've gotten to do it in different contexts, but I'm the same person.
Yeah, and that's kind of unexpected, I think, because a lot of business leaders that I've talked with over the years feel as if perhaps hiring from the nonprofit sector is hiring someone who's not quite up to par, right? Who would need to have skill improvements or additional education. So, Jim, if you were going to talk to somebody out there who was hiring in a business context, knowing your background, what would you say?
I would encourage you to take a chance on someone from a different sector. I mean, you're certainly hiring for a particular set of skills, capacities in a person, but be open to the fact of someone who's been putting those skills to work in a very different context. I think you might be pleasantly surprised at the creative and innovative solutions someone who's been putting those skills to work in a different arena brings to your company.
But does that mean then that the nonprofit and the profit sector are the same? I mean, are they meeting the same needs? Can you just easily jump from one to the other?
I mean, they're different structures. I think there are similarities, and that certainly both for-profit and nonprofit organizations exist to meet needs or to solve problems. I think the differences lie in that they're in the way that they mobilize resources to engage those problems differently, and in the way that's the most effective and efficient for solving those particular problems. So there certainly are some differences between the two.
Okay, so give us some examples. So you work for Provident Insurance. I've already talked about the fact that it meets the needs of firefighters and emergency responders when it comes to insurance. So you said something about Kirk's line. Kirk, just raise your hand. Come on, be identified. Kirk's line, that commerce is the way that most of us love and serve our neighbor. So what does that look like?
I think I really believed in my early 20s that the nonprofit world those were the organizations that were helping human flourishing. A little bit like Pastor Brooks was saying earlier in terms of free stuff. You know, when you're feeding the hungry and clothing the naked and healing the sick, that's the kind of work it's the only kind of work that creates human flourishing. And I was really wrong about that. It wasn't until I had the opportunity to work in the for-profit sector that I realized the impact that happens on so many more layers when you're seeking to solve a problem. So giving you an example from where I work now, Provident, we insure firefighters. And 70% of America is protected by volunteer firefighters. And so when these folks are doing what they do, serving us, if they're to get hurt or die in the line of duty, they themselves and their families are at really significant risk of financial hardship. And so we protect the people that protect us. So that's the particular problem that we seek to solve in the wide world. And we seek to solve it with our solution, which is insurance. And we're actually really good at solving that particular problem, but our impact on the world is much more broad than that, has a lot more layers to it. One of those layers of impact is that we really serve local governments. because they can purchase our products and put them in place, they actually empower their citizens to volunteer and to do that in a way that serves their communities without them risking financial ruin if something goes wrong. Another layer of impact is on our corporate partners. We've been serving this niche for almost 90 years. And during that time, we've developed significant experience and relational capital in our niche. And in the insurance world, we're regulated. And so we rely on our corporate partners. We have to have financial capital reserves on hand to be able to pay all of our potential claims. And so we need our partners. We couldn't do what we do without some of the financial backing of our partners, as well as some of the actuarial and insurance expertise that they bring. So we couldn't do what we do without them. But on the other hand, they couldn't reach our niche. They couldn't get into this market without the expertise and the relationships that we bring. So there's really profound synergistic relationship that happens, and we impact one another, and we expand the impact we're able to make. Another layer of impact would be on our broker networks. So the way that we distribute our products is through independent agents and brokers across the country. And so our brokers know that we're going to take really good care of their customers. We do that well. And they also know, in many cases, through decades of working with us, that we seek to be really good partners and to empower our brokers to be successful in their communities and in everything that they do. And I guess one of the last layers of impact would be on Providence employees. 30 some odd people work for us, and the company does a great job of taking care of their employees. People. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that in our business model and sort of seeking to solve one small problem in the world, sort of protecting the financial assets of firefighters, we actually have a pretty profound multi-layered impact on our world. I think commerce has a pretty incredible tool to achieve human flourishing, as you mentioned earlier.
Well, let's talk about success. I think for those of us that work in the secular marketplace, we often would gauge success perhaps by our annual income or the kind of raise we got this year or how much our company's grown. In the nonprofit sector, depending on what your passion is, you might gauge success in a different way. Sometimes in nonprofit sectors, it's verboten to even discuss success, right? So let's turn to both of you guys. Katie, let's go to you. What does success look like for you?
Well, I think all those things. The thing that I've found to be important for me in understanding success is that things are measurable. I'm so grateful for what Pastor Brooks said about data-driven decision making. That's how I'm wired. Like, I want to know where are we going? What does winning look like? And how close are we to getting there? That's really all you need to know about me. That's the end. So how do we win? Like, for me in my job, working in a place where we have clear goals together, so I want to be part of the team that moves the ball. Like, that's winning. That's success for me. And we can define winning a lot of different ways, but when I work in a place with clear goals and a pathway to move there, I feel tied in. Like, I feel like I'm part of something big. I want to contribute. That's success for me. I loved working at nonprofits that actually cared about defining. I mean, you're not supposed to say winning in nonprofit, but that's true. Like, hey, if we say we're about this, how do we know if we get there? And both Jim and I worked together at the CCO at a time when the organization was saying we have this beautiful vision of transforming college students to transform the world. How in the world do we know if we're getting any closer to that? Right. And is while having a lot of students at Jubilee is awesome, is that sufficient? Is attendance sufficient? And so I think Jim and I were both formed by, we've talked about this, about the way that being part of the conversation of saying, like, we actually should have some metrics about what we're trying to do so we know if we're doing it. That changed my understanding of my role at the CCO in a really big way, because if I fail anywhere, it's on the data over compassion side, and so I felt lost there. So it helped me understand that we're doing this for a reason, and we can actually track it. So that's really important for me personally. Also, working hard at work worth doing is incredibly important, and getting to do it with people who I enjoy and respect has been a huge part of my life. Those are some of the rewards. getting paid well is also a great reward. And that has also been game-changing for me, just to be frank. So moving from the nonprofit to for-profit world has, for me, meant more financial success. However, that is not my only mark of success. And if I were offered double my salary to go on vacation for a year, maybe a year. I'd probably do it for a year. But I wouldn't do it forever. 2 years would be too much. It would. I wouldn't feel successful because I want to be a part of something. I want to know where the action is and how I can be a part of it. And in the same way, if there was a really growing organization or effort that wanted to pay me a lot of money to do what I'm really good at in work that I didn't think is worth doing, that's moving in the opposite direction of human flourishing, I wouldn't do that. Money is not the decider for me, but it's wonderful to be in a situation where that's a part of the package for me.
Jim, same question, success.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think both for-profit and nonprofit organizations can be about kingdom work. They have an incredible capacity to impact the world for good, but they also have a really big capacity to impact the world in ways that harm it. And so I think success in the kingdom of God can never be reduced to just one dimension. It's got to be multidimensional. If we lift up one thing as our sole measure of success, then we run the risk of justifying any means necessary to achieve that end. In a for-profit company, you've got to make money. So profit has to be one of the measures of success. If you don't make profit, you're going to go out of business and you cannot solve your particular problem, you can't impact the wider world. But if profit's your only measure, you run the risk of earning it at the expense of your customers, and you really lose the ability to impact the world in those broader ways. So just give you one example. I have the privilege of working for a company, an insurance company, that loves to pay claims.
What?
Sounds like,
crazy.
It doesn't work, but we do. And there's been times in our 88-year history that we've encountered claims that where there's been a real need. And we haven't been able to respond to that need because it falls outside of our policy language. And so we had a case where a volunteer responded to a house fire, and a building collapsed on him, and he was injured really badly. And he had to have multiple surgeries and long physical therapy. And we were able to respond to take care of a lot of those bills and his lost income. So we were able to do a lot of the financial protection well. But when he sort of got through his last surgery and they took him back to his house and put him in his wheelchair, they had forgotten that he has a flight of steps to get up to his front door. And being firefighters, they're like, some plywood and 2x4s, we'll build you a ramp, no problem. So they picked him up, pushed him up onto his porch and went to push his 34-inch wheelchair through his 32-inch front door and just recognized this is a bigger problem than we thought. And at the time, we didn't have the benefit, the language in our policy to be able to cover the cost of building that ramp or widening that door or putting in a handicap accessible restroom. And so the next edition of our policy, we created that benefit language. And had our company's goal been exclusively profit, we wouldn't have chosen to be expansive with our benefits, and we would have really missed an opportunity to impact the world in a more holistic way. I think the CCO, too, is a great example of an organization that has multiple bottom lines. Their mission is transforming college students to transform the world. One of the things that makes the CCO unique is that they do that in partnership. So they actually come alongside of churches and colleges and universities to help accomplish that mission. So when CCO staff are working with students, certainly there's transformation going on there, but they've got to be mindful of their partners' goals as well. So success in the CCO is not only measured by transformed lives of students, it's also measured by transforming organizations. And that's pretty exciting. My basic point is that they both nonprofit and for-profit have incredible power to do good. But as my favorite theologian, Spider-Man, would say, with great power comes great responsibility. And there's incredible capacity.
You can tweet that out, #JPro16.
Right. Original idea.
Original idea.
Can I say one more thing about that, too? Because I think, we're up here. Everybody Jim and I have ever worked for is in this room. So we have to, say all the really great things. That's true. And we have both, I'll speak for myself and speak for Jim and the conversations we've had preparing for this, we've been really fortunate to work at great places to work. And neither of us have ever worked at a perfect place. And success can't be defined as an ideal working situation because that's not real. So, we're called, we're made, created to work, and we're also guaranteed toil in our work. And that takes all kinds of different forms for us. But I would just say if you're on one side of the for-profit, nonprofit fence or the other, I assure you the grass is no less thorny on the other side. And there's no perfect workplace because we're broken people in broken systems, but that's the mystery and joy of the gospel, that we get to work together in that. And so I would just say, don't make that your mark of success either. But it's worth doing. It's worth toiling together.
Okay, last question. We have about 3 minutes left, so you each have a minute and a half. Here's the question. So we've talked to both of these people, Katie and Jim, who've transitioned from nonprofit sector to for-profit sector. So my question, of course, is, would you go back? So do you, either one of you, see a scenario where you would go back to the nonprofit sector?
No? Jim, you're a better person than I am.
All of my bosses are at the front table. I have the distinct privilege of working for a pretty amazing organization, and I can say that with all truthfulness. Would I categorically, resist any opportunity? Probably not, but at this point, I work for a pretty great place, and I'm happy to do so.
Yeah. Katie?
My initial thought is no.
Okay.
But I think I'm really excited about, again, I just want to know where's the action at? And if there were a position in an organization doing the kind of work that I think is really moving the ball, I would certainly consider it. But so there are a couple of places. I might work for Pastor Brooks, actually. I might move to Detroit and work for Pastor Brooks. But my initial response stands. It's fine, boss. My boss is here too, everybody.
Okay, so I said it was the last question, but I thought of one more. So your closing comments, Jim, I'll let you close it out.
Okay.
So if you were going to just kind of summarize where we've been and maybe kind of put an exclamation point on it, what would you say?
Well, I love a lot of what Pastor Brooks was talking about earlier. And I worship in a liturgically oriented church. And we close every Sunday with, "Go in peace to love and serve the Lord." And those words are really powerful to me on Monday when I drive into the office. Because what I do, what we all do, Monday through Saturday, is kingdom work. And it's sometimes, though, hard to remember that. And so I've often wondered, what would it look like for our worshiping communities to more explicitly encourage and support the work that happens Monday through Saturday? So in my churches, we often bring up our short-term missionaries, and we lay hands on them, and we pray for them, and we commission to go do the work of the church in a foreign place. And I love that. And I've often wondered, what would it be like if we invited up our people by their profession? If we invited up our psychiatrists, and we invited up our teachers and our insurance sales guys. What if we invited them up and we laid hands on them and we prayed for them and we commissioned them as a church to go out and love and serve the Lord? Because what we do Monday through Saturday is the work of the kingdom. And so I guess I would love to see more of that happen in our world because we need it. As you're going into your workplaces, those really are in many ways foreign lands. And there are foreign gods and idols and principalities and powers in those places. And in our work, we need wisdom and we need guidance and we need protection every bit as much as the missionaries that we send.
Katie Tarara,